Okay, I was not going to do this video because my reasons are it does kind of give away things to the enemy that they can use for their planning on how to exploit this. But because of the conversation and that stuff with the militias do not recruit felons videos, I kind of figured I should probably do this video. Now, I'm going to make a couple notes first here. First off, since I don't do this much, you see up at the top the address for the Patreon channel. If you like the videos, come on over there, kick me a buck or two. The money that I bring in through Patreon gets used for supplies for the militia unit that I am in. Any help is greatly appreciated. You can give as little as $1. And also, if you want to talk to me in private, ask me a question like the subscriber did with the felon situation with this John Milton, you can contact me through there. Unfortunately, you can only send me messages if you are a patron. Now, the second thing I want to discuss, Mark Kernke of the Michigan Militia, one of the big names in the militia unit or militia movement, made a comment on those videos. And he made the comment implying that I'm being politically correct by not allowing in felons. And he implied that he believes I will not be there when the fight happens, that I'm going to basically run off and cower in fear. And he knows that because he's been in the militia for 40-some years. Mark, I hate to break this to you, but it's about time to realize that the next generation is starting to take over. The generation that was forged in the crucibles of Iraq and Afghanistan, of the Philippines, of Syria, of all the little hellholes we've been involved in for the last 20-some years. And we might do things a little bit differently than the way you have done things. I have a lot of respect for you and what you have done. And you need to realize that this next generation, we've learned from your example, from things that you've put out there, teaching and that stuff, from your videos that you did that were originally on VHS, but people have uploaded onto the internet. We've watched those videos, we've learned from them. And more importantly, we were taught by the military to learn from our enemy, to adapt, to overcome their capabilities. We've learned and we study the lessons from Vietnam. We study the lessons from counterinsurgency operations and guerrilla operations around the world. We observe what goes on in Syria, what's gone on in Ukraine and other little hot spots. And we take those lessons and we're incorporating them into the next round of battle drills and operations. And something that I did put in the comment, and I do mean this, wouldn't the politically correct thing in this situation be to allow felons into the militia? Because one of the groups that at least the Democrats are trying to quote-unquote improve their lot in life is felons. Aren't they one of the groups that they're out there right now talking about they're disadvantaged and all that stuff, and they're trying to help them? And the way they're trying to help them is get their right to vote back so that they can vote in the upcoming election. you can guarantee they won't allow the restoration of firearms rights. That won't happen. But they want to make sure that they get those felons into the voting booths and that their votes will count officially. Now, into the meat and potatoes of this video, which is kind of making me hungry because I haven't had breakfast yet. It gives me an idea what to have. Okay, wartime recruitment or recruiting. There's two basic situations for this. The first is field recruiting, which is done by the unit. And the second is quote-unquote recruitment centers. Now, there's not a lot of information out there on this type of thing. So, you know, it's been done before, obviously. The French Resistance did it, and other underground organizations across Europe did it. It's a guarantee that the Viet Cong did it. In Vietnam, they had to bring in new people all the time, and it wasn't always through forced conscription. You can guarantee there was volunteers. But the people that did that stuff did not exactly write the information down. So I got to go off of an assessment on how it's possible to do this. Now, first we'll start with field recruitment. This is done by the unit while moving through their area of operations, while they're on missions, or moving from one location to another. This could be they're moving through a community to make a public appearance to show them that, hey, we're still out there, we're still fighting. Now, this is the one that has the highest chance of infiltration because there is little to no vetting that is done of the prospects, of the potential recruits. Now, you move through a community, or you might come across someone while you're on patrol and they say that they want to join the resistance, the rebellion, whatever. Have this person meet with a non-commissioned officer, preferably the unit first sergeant or the platoon sergeant, to do a quick evaluation. First, you're going to do visual. You know, do they look like they could fight? Did it seem like they won't run off during the first shots? And also the general, you know, medical evaluation too. You know, do they have both eyes, both arms, hands, both legs and such? If they have something that would interfere with them being able to do combat operations, maybe this person could be sent over to the auxiliary. Now, this NCO should not be the only person involved in this process. There should be a second, maybe a third non-commissioned officer or an officer that's observing from the side. And they're trying to do it nonchalantly, you know, without being noticed if possible. So you have the person that's asking the questions and you have an observer. That second set of eyes, that second set of ears typically is going to pick up things that the recruiter will not. Now start asking the prospect, what are their reasons for joining? And let them know that it's not like it is in the movies. It's dirty, it's nasty, people get hurt, you can get killed, you'll see other people killed, to include potentially your buddies. But potentially on how the war is, they might be seeing this stuff anyway. So they may already know that. After you get that out of the way, find out their reasons for joining. Then you start asking questions to find out about them. What skills do they have? What's their background? Are they a veteran? Were they a hunter? A fisherman? You know, that type of stuff. And a big thing is, do they have a family, and can the family support themselves while this person is gone? If the family can't, then you probably should not bring that prospect with. You may need the recruits, but I think that family may need them more in that situation. And you may want to find out what's the prospect's age, especially if this is a younger looking person. You know, there is that story of a kid who was 12 years old who joined the Navy back in World War II. He was able to somewhat fool them at the recruiting station. They pegged him as being young, but they thought he was only like 16 or so. But they let him in. And he served in the Pacific until he got caught. And they found out he was in the war zone at 13 years old. It's an interesting story. And I really think the youngest we should allow in during war is probably 16. I know federal law right now states that you have to be at least 17. Now, while you're questioning the person, observe for any signs of lying and made up sounds good answers. Ideally, one of the people that's involved in this questioning process, especially as the observer, they should have some type of background in like police investigations and that stuff. Someone who's trained to look for the signals that a person is lying, is able to tell when someone's not telling the truth if they're hiding something. Now, this was brought up many times in the comments on the previous videos. Once the war happens, the whole thing with felons kind of goes out the window. If the person's willing to fight, you're probably going to let them fight. So at that situation, it doesn't really matter if that person has a criminal background. Now, after you've answered all your questions, you've drawn out as much info as you think you need. Had the prospect watched by one of the troops while this recruiter has to check on something quick. The recruiter and the observers then quietly meet off on the side, out of sight of the prospect, and then discuss them, their feelings about this person, their answers, and so forth. They then notify the officer in charge for that person's final approval. Now, if there is a militia auxiliary element in that area, ask them quietly about this prospect. What they know. Is this person new to the area, suspiciously? Does this person have known ties with the occupation force, with globalist forces? What's this person's background? Is it suspicious? Is this just a troublemaker who's trying to make good? Or is this just a troublemaker who's looking for a new way to hurt people? They're looking for a new way to get out there and kill people. Or if this person is a sexual predator, are they looking for a new crop of victims? So try to find out what you can in that area. Now, if you have any doubts about this person, you don't trust them, don't outright tell them that. Tell them something like you can't bring them right now because of the mission, or their family needs them more, something along those lines. If it is an infiltrator, you deny them. They may run right off right away. Jump on that radio, jump on that phone, notify the occupying forces that you're in the area where you're going and that stuff, and then your unit gets taken out. You kind of dangle that hope in front of them that they're still going to get in, that you're going to come back for them. Now, if you agree to bring this prospect or potential prospects, there may be more than one, you may have a group. Send them with a troop or a couple troops to get what gear they have, the stuff that they're going to need. Stuff like, a winter jacket, rain gear, if they got something to cook their own foods with, a rucksack, boots. That might turn out to be a big thing if, they're walking around in, flip-flops. Send them home to get a pair of boots, or at least a pair of hiking shoes if they have them. If they don't have any stuff, well, then you'll supply them from a cache. But as much as possible, if they have gear of their own, they should bring it with them. Who knows, this person might be a veteran and he's hidden his weapon and his gear under the floor of their garage, or hidden it under the insulation of their attic. They've just been sitting off waiting for a resistance unit to move through the area to join up with. He may have a full set of stuff ready to go. Now pair 1 or 2 prospects with a militiaman as an observer or a buddy team as you move out. And then as soon as is feasible, pass them off to the trainers, so that this person begins their little training process, their mini basic training out in the field, to get them ready for being a member of the unit. Now the next one we have is the Recruitment Center. This is done by a member of your militia auxiliary or your support network. There's a couple ways this can be done that I can think of. First off, the people that are designated for this duty, they watch and listen for people who may want to join up or have reasons to. An example of that is someone who's lost everything. The occupiers have come through. They've burned down this person's home, destroyed their business, confiscated their property, slaughtered their family, or arrested them and sent them off to a detention center, and eventually off to a death camp. I don't doubt stuff like that's going to pop up during the war. Give this person a direction. Get them focused on, hey, they can fight back and they have a reason to. Get this person out of that slump, out of that depression. Show them that they don't have to just sit down and die, that they don't have to give up, that they can fight back. They can take it out on the enemy, the people that caused this problems for them. And if their family has been taken prisoner and that stuff, do your best to try to free them. Get them out of that slave camp, out of that detention center. Now the recruiter should talk to them and feel them out. Ask them, what do they think about the resistance, about the occupation, what's going on currently, that type of stuff. Do things casually at first. Just bring it up, well, what do you think about this type things. And then also, if you can, before you talk to this person, find out what you can about them from your intel network in the area. Do they know if this person is an infiltrator, is a supporter of the enemy? Or are they just a fence sitter? What assessment do they have, if any? And then after you've questioned them and that stuff, and they've given you some answers that you think are show that they're a potential prospect, mention that they can fight back, that they can take a stand against what's going on. But always remember, in all this stuff, If in doubt, break contact. And in this situation, break contact slowly and move on. Now, after you've talked to this person, maybe then you're going to want to send them on to the quote-unquote recruitment center. And that's the final area I'm going to talk about here. This is a location where people can go who are looking to join up. A place that they can meet the recruiter. A really good example of this, if you think about it, is in the movie The Patriot. When Benjamin Martin, Mel Gibson's character, in the early part of the movie goes to the tavern. And he and the Frenchman call out, God Save King George. Well, that tavern later on in the movie gets burned, if you noticed. I got a feeling that tavern was used as a recruitment center by Benjamin Martin's militia in the movie, and that's why it was burned. And you see this also in movies about World War II, the French Resistance, where you'll have the recruiter is at the such and such cafe or such and such bar. So those are potential places for setting up recruitment centers. Inside a bar, inside a club, maybe in some type of store, potentially at a church. Some location where people come to publicly, where there's not as much questions about people coming and going. And if a person sits there for a while and talks with someone, it's not going to draw as much attention. Now, at the recruitment center, this must be done as a team. You will have the recruiter who actually meets with the person, and then you will have at least one observer who, just like in the field recruiting, they're watching for those signs of lying, watching for those signs of obfuscation, for made up stories and that stuff, getting a feel for the person. Now, you should also have security inside and out. Someone who's on the outside watching for when the enemy's patrols are moving through the area, or if they see what looks like a police raid coming down the street. You have security on the inside who's overwatching the whole situation. If they see this prospect pull a weapon, the security automatically puts a bullet in the back of the prospect without questions. That security's job is to protect the recruiter and the observers. And then they would get out of there as quick as possible. And then find a different location. Now, the recruiter meets with the prospect and questions them, just like out in the field. Afterwards, the recruiter says they have to go to the bathroom or whatever, and they quietly meet with the observers out of sight and discusses the prospect with them. Now, the information that you get from the prospect will be given to your intel section so that they can do a general background check and story investigation to find out, is this person being truthful or are they concealing something? Tell this prospect that you're going to have to meet with them again. So tell them a location and a time. It could be, okay, come back here tomorrow night at, say, 8 p.m. Or tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock when the store opens. Or at 8:30 before the store opens. That type of thing. Now, you meet with the prospect a second time after you've gotten the information from Intel. And if this person passes, you tell them the where and when to meet the guide, who will take them to the militia unit in the field. Or if they're in the city, to the training center so that they can begin their training. If this person does not pass the smell test, does not pass Intel, you tell this person that, I'm sorry, but we can't meet with you. Or we can't use you. You'll come up with your own process on how to do this stuff and how to handle it. I'm not a recruiter, I never was. Now, any prospects that are brought to the unit, must be under constant observation to ferret out infiltrators and spies, even after training is complete, until they prove themselves as reliable. There will be a point where you're going to say, okay, good enough, let them be. Now, these are just general things on how this could be done. Come up with what will work in your area, what works best. It's going to be different everywhere. Each unit is going to be different. They may only use one particular way of recruiting, or they may have 12 different ways. They may have contacts with the town priest at their cathedral, or the pastor at the church in the area. It's possible that the recruiter could be, a storekeeper at the country store, or, convenience store type things. You'll come up with a way that works for you, and if need be, change your tactics, change how you do recruiting if the enemy starts or could potentially be starting to narrow down the information as to who the recruiter is and where they are. Always try to stay one step ahead of the enemy. Now, something you might be asking is, how will people know about the recruiter at the recruitment center? Word will get around. It could be word that you put out yourself, or word that's put out by a prospect before they go off to the field. A prospect who's an infiltrator, yeah, they're going to get the word out, definitely. They're going to report the information, this recruiter and all that stuff, to the person that they report to in the occupation forces. So this gives you somewhat of an idea on how this can be done. Research it yourself. Maybe you'll come out a lot luckier on it than I did when I've tried looking up this stuff in the past. It's been a while. Maybe there's more information out there now than when I tried doing it. Hopefully this answered your questions, and those of you with the felony background who have been really butthurt about me saying that we do not recruit felons at this time, you'll see that potentially you could still join the resistance, still join the militia after things would kick off, because at that point it really doesn't matter if we have felons in the ranks or not, because all of us are felons because we're fighting back. But for right now, pre-war, for the safety of the unit, in order to keep as many people with rifles in their hands in the units and the units in the field ready for anything that happens, we can't allow felons right now. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.